Hello everybody, Nalo1904 here, and today we are reviewing the Pet Sounds album by the Beach Boys. Kind of a little history about this album. This album came out in 1966. It's by the Beach Boys who, before this album was released, was a group that did a lot of surfs up, surfing type songs in their music. They never really explored anything outside of that, which is a little ironic and a little weird because only one of the Beach Boys actually did surf and actually went out on the ocean. This came at a time where Brian Wilson was not really with the Beach Boys as he kind of a panic attack on a plane, and because of that he didn't really want to travel with the Beach Boys anymore, which led to him kind of just being isolated at home, kind of away from everyone. And because of that, he was able to release this masterpiece of an album. The Beach Boys came back from the tour that they were on, and Brian Wilson had all the music done and everything, all the instrumentals, all the instrumentation, and he was ready to just put the voices together and the lyrics and complete this album. But the only thing is the Beach Boys didn't really like it too much, in particular Mike Love, which, by the way, Mike Love is the most terrible human being in the world. I wish he was not a part of the Beach Boys because he really stopped Brian Wilson from having his creativity. But it is what it is, and because of this, it was really hard for Brian Wilson to actually get this album made, with Mike Love just being really against him. They didn't like that they were doing a new direction of this music. They wanted to stick with the surfing and the ocean and the summer type music. But eventually, Brian Wilson was able to get this album released. The reason why Brian Wilson made this album is because the Beatles at the time, they had released Rubber Soul in '65, and the Beatles kind of changed the way an album was, kind of making it a concept album, if you will. And Brian Wilson was absolutely amazed by this, and he wanted to make something better. Because during the mid-'60s, the Beach Boys and Beatles kind of had a little bit of a rivalry, a little friendly rivalry between each other. Which, by the way, people do not give Beach Boys enough credit. The Beach Boys are an amazing group. Even without the Pet Sounds album, their music is just wonderful, and I don't understand why people hate on Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys so much. Their music is absolutely amazing. They are truly one of the greatest groups of all time. But anyway, now that we got that out of the way, so because of that, this made Brian Wilson want to create Pet Sounds, create an album that kind of went towards his feelings, his deep internal feelings, and explore a lot of kind of deep themes, but also make it fun, which is what makes this album so amazing, is that there's a lot of serious moments in this album, a lot of moments that are just great times of exploring your inner self, but also a lot of fun in it too. Examples, Sloop John B is such a fun song. This album is so great. It just feels that it takes you to a place. It takes you to a place where you feel that, kind of like Disneyland, a very happy place, but also kind of a sad place because you're exploring deep themes. A big theme in this album is dealing with growing up, dealing with not being a kid anymore, facing the reality that life is not going to be easy anymore. You're going to have to grow up. You're going to have to get used to the real world. The album kind of starts out in the beginning with starting out as a kid, as the first line in the album on the song "Wouldn't It Be Nice" is, "Wouldn't it be nice if we were older and didn't have to wait so long," is the first line of the whole album. So clearly from the get-go, it's an album that kind of talks about childhood, but then as we see as the album progresses, we see the album kind of take on a new form. We see the album get more serious and see Brian Wilson really have to struggle, or whoever this main character of this album, have to struggle with becoming older and having to deal with all the troubles that go with that. There's a lot of different themes that are developed in this album. Love is a huge theme. There's a lot of love songs, such as "God Only Knows," which is one of the greatest songs on this album. Also, "Love Is Here Today," or it's called something like that. A lot of love songs, but also just a lot of songs about how Brian Wilson struggles with how girls feel about him, as in songs that "That's Not Me" and "I Just Wasn't Made for These Times," where he kind of struggles with his relationships. He doesn't think that he's quite enough in his relationships, and that he struggles a lot with girls and how they'll feel about him. And this whole album is just an album about Brian Wilson's feelings, and the way he writes it, makes it relatable to us as the audience, as you really get a sense of being able to relate to him. This is a very relatable album, an album that, if you really listen to the lyrics, the songwriting, you can't help but feel emotional. This is an album that's kind of hit me emotionally as well, and the songwriting is just absolutely amazing from front to back through this thing. The way that Brian Wilson can tell a story, and that he can tell it in such a short amount of time, as most songs in this album are 3 minutes. The album's only 38 minutes. It's 13 songs, 38 minutes, and it's a very short album, but it's an album that really goes through a lot of emotions. Love being one, having to grow up as one another one. Also just dysphoria, not really feeling that you're in the right place, which is what we kind of see through That's Not Me. Having to grow up. One line in that is, I wanted a dream and I packed up and left for the city. I soon found out that my life wasn't so pretty. Which really shows that, Brian Wilson really struggling, and it's something that is just so relatable. And this album is 55 years old and it still relates today. This album has such great songwriting, has such great singing. Also, just the instrumentation. Brian Wilson is literally the Mozart of the 20th century. The way that he's able to put all these different instruments together, and make just such a wonderful sound. I mean, there's 2 instrumentals on this album too, which are absolutely amazing. Pet Sounds, the title track, and Let's Stay Away for a While. Those 2 instrumentals are amazing. But honestly, Brian Wilson could have made this without lyrics. He could have made this without singing, and it still would have portrayed such a great message, But he adds the singing too, and just it adds on more and more to this album. And then the singing is obviously another amazing part of this album. The Beach Boys have such great sound. They have such great pitches. They can hit any note from low to high. And it's really shown on this album as the way that they deliver these lines of heartbreak, but also of happiness. It's just so wonderful. No one can really touch that, and it's 4 or 5 people that can all sing wonderfully. I mean, it's an amazing album. It stood the test of time. Like I said, it didn't really get good reviews when it first came out. I just feel like people didn't understand it, which is kind of a stupid reason to give, and kind of a mean reason to give, to be like, well, you didn't understand it. But truly, I don't think people understood this album when it came out. I feel that it was a very different, and it's very ahead of its time. And because of that, I don't think people really got the messages, and it didn't really relate to people back then. But over time, it's become a great album, and now it's pretty much the godfather of music albums. It's considered one of the greatest albums of all time, and it's personally one of my favorite albums, and I definitely recommend it. If you like good singing, if you like good songwriting, if you like just good sound in general, if you like an album that can take you to a place and can leave you there, I mean, this album does that. This album just really takes you to a place, and you don't really think about time. Sometimes when you listen to albums, you kind of think like, okay, can we get to the end here? This is kind of going on for a long time. But with this album, you don't really have that. You kind of just have an album that you don't really look at the time. It goes by so quickly, and that's kind of one of the few flaws that are kind of in this album, which ends up not really being a flaw, is the fact that it is just really short. But that's not a flaw, obviously. It's a perfect amount of time. A little bit of a problem I have with it is there's some songs that I personally don't like that aren't good songs. They end up serving to the meaning of the album. But some songs I don't like are Love Is Here Today, I Know There's an Answer, and Don't Talk Period on My Shoulders. Those songs I don't care for too much. They're not bad songs, don't get me wrong. This is an album where you don't really end up skipping any of it. It's all great. But those are 3 songs that I just personally don't like. But then again, like I said, they serve to the story. They serve to the plot of the album. And that's kind of all I really have on this album. It's a wonderful album. And I would probably give it a 9.4 out of 10. Just tell me, what do you guys think of this album? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I'd love to know. And have a great day.